Hi, good afternoon, my YouTube family. Welcome to another episode of Many Moods of Maverick, where I'll be continuing from where I left off, focusing on the entertainment industry. And of course, I was talking about the DC Extended Universe the last time around. And before I go any further, I'd like to state that it wasn't actually Zack Snyder that was doing the changes in terms of, who will be playing what roles. It was actually James Gunn moving forward from previous stars or persons who are going to be playing various roles. Like Henry Cavill was supposed to have played Superman, the Man of Steel. He's no longer going to be playing that role. And then, there's a new Supergirl compared to who we had from before. She was in the Flash movie, that dismal movie. But the character, the girl that played Supergirl, I think she was good. She was ready for the role, but for some reason or the other, James Gunn decided to make some changes. So here we are, and this is what we have to work with. All right. My problem that I had is that Warner Brothers seemed to be heavily focused on critics. Warner Brothers, persons involved in the production of DC comics to movies, they seem to be heavily focused on what critics say, what critics think. So if they can please the critics, then they're thinking that, if we are critically successful, then that's the way to go. That's wrong. That was not the way to go. I think if Michael Bay was focusing on critics, Transformers wouldn't have become the box office juggernaut that it did. And they're still making more and more Transformers up until this very day. Albeit, I'm not sure how much Michael Bay is involved in those movies or these upcoming movies, but he never paid much attention to what critics had to say. It's good to pay attention to the critics, don't get me wrong, but it's just when a production company is going to go forward to just focus on critics and pleasing critics and not focusing on pleasing the movie-going audience. That's where I had a problem. All right, and I must emphasize also that I like David Ayer's Suicide Squad. It was right on target as far as I'm concerned, and it was a box office success, which makes me wonder, why was it that James Gunn thought he needed to have that movie made over? I'm kind of wondering about that, in his version, that is. Because as last I checked, it was a box office flop. Critical darling. Critics liked it, but it was a box office flop. And it's still surprising to me up until this very day that he's the one, along with Peter Safran, who, I don't know much about Peter Safran, but based on James Gunn track record, as far as movies are concerned, I honestly never thought him to be the proper fit to helm the DC Extended Universe, because if he's going to be coming with a lot of comedy, that's not, in my own opinion, that's not going to work. Unless it's going to be the comedy movie going audience who's going to be, attending those shows. But if he said the problem that the audience had with previous Superman movies, like Superman Returns with Brandon Root, was its lack of action, its lack of fierceness. And Zack Snyder brought that, and he not only brought that with the action and the movie, he brought it with the picture. Before you actually saw the movie, you saw the advertisement for the picture, you saw the poster and everything, and Man of Steel, right there and then. It's like that give you an idea that, hey, this is going to be really good, really hard hitting, and it definitely was. All right, and then the action and everything, it trust me, it was off the chain, and I liked it. I think going forward, DC should actually focus on having more darkness into their movie content instead of focusing on making it light and trying to put a more comedic spin on it. It hasn't worked. It's not working. They need to focus. They really need to. And then I notice also that, like I said from before, DC seems to be trying to induct a lot of LGBTQ elements within their television shows in particular. And, I was kind of wondering what that is all about, though. Like, everybody has a voice, don't get me wrong, and that includes the LGBTQ community. They have a voice. Now, I must make it known that it's not to say that I am against people. I'm not against people who are, let's put it this way. You can be a person, a human being, and I love human beings. But then I do not must support the lifestyle that you live. So if you're a human being but you're a criminal, I don't support your criminal activity. All right? If you're members of the LGBTQ community, you do your thing, you have a voice, okay? But you know, it's not like I don't support the lifestyle of the LGBTQ community, but everybody has a voice. So I love everybody. That goes without saying. Everybody has a voice, all right? So whether you're a heterosexual or LGBTQ member, you know, my love goes out for everybody, but I do not must support your lifestyle. And like I've said before, I don't support the lifestyle of the LGBTQ community. And I think when DC was trying to see if they could induct into their television shows in particular a lot of these elements, I think it worked against them. There's nobody, as far as I can tell, who is actually clamoring for the return of any specific DC movie, whether it be Arrow or The Flash. But I've seen where people on the Marvel side of things have been clamoring for the return of Daredevil, of Punisher, and probably others. All right, and I'm like, you see, that's the difference. And those shows, when they were going on, they never projected a strong sense or form of anything to do with the LGBT. They just focused on making television shows, you know, staying true to how or who the characters were. So that's what I'm thinking that, you know, DC should be doing instead of trying to be, you know, pleasing people from a political angle, pleasing people from a lifestyle angle. I mean, they need to focus on just making really good shows. If you notice, when Ezra Miller's character as the Flash had a crossover with Grant Gustin's character as the Flash, and I think it was one of those crossover episodes, take a look at how each character behave with each other. I'm kind of wondering, why is it that Ezra Miller felt the need, as far as I am concerned, and a lot of people have been saying it's weird, that he tends to project a feminist attitude in his shows, both in The Flash, the big screen movie, as well as when he was having that interaction with Grant Gustin's character as the Flash. I mean, the way how he touched his suit and everything, it was just feminist, and I'm wondering why he was like that. He never needed to be like that. I mean, just deal with the character as masculine and fierce as possible. You know, I mean, come on, they can do better, and I suspect that the directors, well, I'm not sure if they even saw what was going on, but I suspect that they did. But they should have actually stepped in and see if they could redirect him in a different way to ensure that he project, you know, that masculinity, and it was absent, and that also played against him going into the Flash movie. I think DC going forward should make sure that whoever they're hiring to perform the roles, these people should actually have a clear mind as to who they are. All right? Who they are. You are who you are, not who, you know, like you wish you would be. You know, project who you are, and I think DC, you know, should actually get that straight. I think the Flash movie itself, I think it overdid its time. You could see based on, not the Flash movie, the Flash television show, I think it overdid its time. You could see that, you know, they were struggling with storylines. So it simply means that these bloated episodes, if you know you were struggling with storylines and you wanted your storylines with the Flash television show, each episode, you wanted it to make sense, then actually just condense. You don't have to do like a 20 episode or anything. I mean, if it's going to be too much of a stretch, just condense it to probably about 12 or 15, where you could, you know, make good storylines so the audience could like it. Because I could see that they were struggling. The writers seemed to be struggling with a storyline to come up with, and that specifically affected that show going forward. I think it should have been cancelled after probably the third season. I mean, the best season as far as I'm concerned was the season with Zoom. Oh, if you talk about somebody who drove fear into a group of people, just like Thanos did back in Avengers, you would look at Zoom. I mean, when the episode came on, Enter Zoom, I think that was what it was called. I was like, everybody was like, geez, who is this guy? You know, how is so bad? You know, but then, you know, as the other seasons went along, you could definitely see that the characters were struggling with, you know, they were struggling, and the storylines just wasn't necessarily adding up. You know, people got bored until a lot of people stopped watching the show. All right, and it's not a fault of Grant Gustin or the stars. I just think it was just the storyline of the show. It was just, you know, it was just faulty, and they should have done better with that, and they didn't. And hence, it is what it is at this particular moment. So, you know, we should see what would happen going forward with the rest of the remaining DC movies. I mean, a lot of their television shows have been cancelled. Um, that's also a wait and see as to how things will work out as far as that is concerned. Um, I was kind of wondering though, in the Flash television show, especially with the introduction of Bart, why was he wearing gold nail polish on his fingernails? I don't see what that was for or why that was necessary, but it kind of made me wonder why he was doing that, and I couldn't tell. But that was what was happening, and I never thought that played out well either. I noticed he had, the earring thing, I was like, come on, DC, you guys know better, do better. Just focus on making good television shows. I noticed that Superman and Lois also, I remember there was a time when I read somewhere online that, there's a possibility that DC would be focusing on making high budget television shows. And I think Superman and Lois actually went this direction because it has actually been a really good show. As far as I'm concerned, it's probably the best of all of them. I mean, Arrow, when it initially started, season 1, season 2, season 3, I believe, just up to season 3, it was really good. They were on their way to something, and then for some reason or other, they toned down. And then, I'm going to be elaborating on that a little bit more. But, Superman and Lois has been a really good television show, except, again, elements of, the LGBTQ seem to kind of pop up in that show. With the female character who played, one of the brothers' girlfriend. And then there was this other girl in the show who I think they exchange a kiss. It was in one of the earlier seasons, and then I'm like, okay, where are they going again? I mean, it's one thing when they're making a television show that people are enjoying, but why the need to always induct elements of the LGBTQ within your shows? I just don't get that. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Just continue doing what you're doing and do not cause anything to be a hamper to the show itself. Something that, is not necessarily something that the movie going or the television watching audience wants to see. Just, smooth flow. I think they should also, whenever going forward, DC, whether it be for television shows or big screen movies, they should also, you tend to fetch a lot of unknown actors, actors that when you see them, you don't know what they're going to deliver. All right, you don't want somebody necessarily at this particular juncture in the entertainment industry with DC, you don't want to be bringing too many familiar faces to star your show unless, people are going to be focusing heavily on their acting more than the appearance, facial appearance or the body appearance of the individual. You need to focus on their acting. And I think, overall, if you actually get new persons for the roles, and that's where they'll be focusing on. Like, it's not like back in the day when the Man of Steel was being made and Henry Cavill came as the character. And he had some starring roles in some previous movies. But when he actually settled in, and this was new for him, and by the time they finished applying the hair, the suit and everything, he blended in very, very well. I go on record to state, Man of Steel was an excellent movie. It did well at the box office. And I think the problem with DC/Warner Brothers was that it never made over 300 million at the domestic box office and over $1 billion at the international box office. So they started to get into a frenzy and wondering where to turn, and hence Man of Steel 2 never came to fruition. It is sad. I think it was a really good start to the DC Extended Universe, but for some reason or the other, I think Warner Brothers got greedy. It played to their demise, and then all of a sudden their writing was all over the place. There was talk of putting big marquee Justice League characters on television instead of the big screen. It's like they were pretty much ceding to Marvel, allowing Marvel to release their things, making $1 billion almost every show that they release in cinemas. And then they were just ceding that to DC was ceding that to just go ahead and, releasing their shows on television. I heard those talk going around and I was like, really? Are they really thinking of doing that? Like nobody had the balls to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Don't follow what Marvel is doing. Just focus on what you can do and do it well. Don't follow the critics talking about, DC is too dark. The darkness was working. Man of Steel, it worked. Batman versus Superman, it worked. Suicide Squad, it worked. When you decided to go a little bit lighter with Aquaman, it worked because of the climate at that particular time. If you decided that you wanted to make something just slightly lighter than previous DC releases, then during that time was probably the time to do it, like during the Man of Steel time and so on. But then when you decided to continue doing it after Batman, you read the audience wrong. My previous video stated this because you guys went ahead, even with Wonder Woman 1984, you did the same thing. And I'm like, what is DC doing? Stay away from politics, stay away from, satisfying one set of people or trying to, say if you can bring a group to be watching your show who, isn't necessarily going to make it a good box office run of sorts, or even if you bring them onto your television show. I mean, just focus on making a good movie. You don't necessarily have to be pushing into the audience faces, the lifestyle of another group of people. Albeit, like I said, they have their voices. Everybody has a voice and they should be heard. But just focus on making good television shows. Focus on making good big screen movies. And trust me, I think you'll reach far in doing so. I noticed they spoke a lot about, well, not necessarily spoke a lot, but I noticed online I've seen different things pertaining to Zack Snyder's style of directing movies, and it worked well. It worked well. So I don't really see what's the complaint. I noticed some headings were saying, DC needs to do away with Zack Snyder, which is kind of funny because the last Flash movie that came out, who were the characters that they introduced? Characters who were in Man of Steel. That was directed by Zack Snyder. Take a look at Superman and Lois when the fighting is going on. The heat vision is coming out and everything. A lot of that was actually, the fierceness of it was actually coming from what Zack Snyder did. And so I'm surprised that they went ahead and, just almost seemingly copying what Zack Snyder did in their future movies, but yet still I'm seeing different writings and so on going on about Zack Snyder and how he should be done away with and all of that. Look here, Zack Snyder, you're good, you did a pretty good job and I really appreciate it and I think you should continue. The character of Lobo, I get to understand somewhere along the line I saw it that Lobo will be played by Jason Momoa, or should be played by Jason Momoa in I'm guessing the Superman Legacy series, and to be honest with you, I think it's actually not a bad choice. Looks like a good choice to me. But looking at Jason Momoa's Aquaman 2 run, I mean, it made close to, if not about $500 million at the worldwide box office. It didn't do as great as DC was expecting it to do here. But hey, you know what? If they're gonna be changing him, and I suspect that they'll be changing Jason Momoa from playing the character of Aquaman and introducing somebody, probably younger, somebody fresh. Well, like I said, it is where it is at the moment, so they can go ahead and do so, and then we'll see what happens from there. But honestly, there is, I think more appreciation should be shown as far as, the comments that have been made pertaining to Zack Snyder. He did a really good job. He had a family emergency. May his daughter's soul rest in peace. And, his movie was tampered with and it never did well at the box office, so much so that people were clamoring for his version to be released, which it was. And it did what it did. I had a couple of problems with that movie. I explained it in my previous video. I think the Flash running was flawed and they need to correct that. I mean, his running compared to the girl from a Marvel movie. I'm trying to remember what it's called right now, but there is a girl who played a speedster in a Marvel movie, The Eternals. And that girl running was fierce. It looked, it was just really well done. So I'm surprised by the running that the Flash did, in the Flash movie. Like I said, it was not good, and even in the Justice League, both Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder's release, it was flawed, and I'm surprised Zack Snyder actually had that running, continue. I think, there was a couple of problems with even his version of Justice League, but it was much better than the theatrical release. I think what he could have done there and then was make sure that the Flash running was set, to make sure that the setting, the movie setting, for especially coming down to the last part. I think the setting the setup for the fight, that supposedly climatic fight in the last part of that movie, it was flawed. I think it could have been done better. He did much better work with Man of Steel. He did much better work with Batman versus Superman. So I was a bit surprised by that. It was the last part, I mean, yeah, when Superman came in and he started to fight Steppenwolf, yeah, that was good and everything. But I don't know, something about the setup in that last part. Even when Wonder Woman cut off Steppenwolf's head, that was really fierce. That was really good. I like that. But just before you reach those sections, it's all something, the whole red lava looking background thing and all of that. I don't know, something just never worked, and I guess it also never worked with the movie going audience. Even when there was supposed to, I assume, a climatic point that took place with the arrival of Cyborg, into the canal. And I was like, okay, you can see that the intention when that was released in theaters was to say, yeah, here comes Cyborg. That was very lukewarm. It never worked either. So I think, Justice League was okay. The theatrical release was average. It wasn't necessarily all that good. The Zack Snyder's release was good, but could have been better. So there's much work to be done, and let's see how that will go forward, going on. The other thing about it is Joker. The Joker movie will be coming out. I suspect that will be done well because it was unique in its own sense. Taking a look at how, Joaquin Phoenix performed the role was Oscar worthy, it was well done. And then the introduction of, I think part 2 should, if I'm correct. I'm going to check that again, but I'm hearing that Lady Gaga should be in that role, so let's see how that works out. But I think it will do well at the box office because it's a unique kind of movie. People want to see what is offered in that show, and they'll definitely get to see it. So let's see, how that will work out. But DC has their work cut out for them. Warner Brothers has their work cut out for them. There's a lot of work. They need to focus on just making, movies staying true to the characters, not trying anything, not trying to venture into politics like what they did with Wonder Woman 1984. I mean, if you take a look and you remember Michael Moore's Fahrenheit Part 2, that never made anything much at the box office, all right? And it was viewed as a political movie. When you decided that you wanted to go this route, based on what I saw with Wonder Woman 1984, it never worked, and it worked against you guys. So, you guys need to just focus. And then we'll see how everything works out otherwise. I mean, I'm going to do a part 3 for this video, and that should be my final part, where I focus on what DC is going on with. But hey, guys, if you like what I'm saying, I'm going to ask that you subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next one. And let's hope that DC, Warner Brothers, James Gunn, Peter Safran, they stay true and deliver something great. I'm going to be focusing on the television shows: Arrow, Flash, Black Lightning, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Naomi, Doom Patrol, Titans, Stargirl. I'm going to be focusing on those in my upcoming videos, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, guys. All right.